Arguably the most exciting part of the offseason is here as winter meetings have arrived, and that means rumors, that means predictions, that means a lot of potential happenings over the next couple of days and weeks. And we're going to be talking about all of it here on today's episode of Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates. My name is Ethan Smith. Of course, you know me. Follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates throughout this winter period. And an old friend is back. I act like he's been gone for like 4 years at this point, but the last time Gary was on the show was the end of September, and I figured, yeah, we'll give him a break for a while through the kind of quiet hours of this offseason. But Gary's back, folks, for Gary Morgan Monday. And how are you, sir, with the winter meetings? Again, arguably the most exciting part of the offseason is here. How are we feeling right now?
I'm good, man. I'm happy to be back on the show, first of all. It's nice. And I think it's funny how when I skip a week or two, people start making up rumors that we're fighting or something. Because people want that battle royale to be going on in the Pittsburgh commenter community, huh?
Yeah, think so. And eventually I feel like me and Gary are going to hit our pardon the interruption era where like we just argue for the sake of arguing at some point. I just don't know who's Michael Wilbon and who's Tony Kornheiser in this scenario, but that won't be happening anytime soon, I don't think. Folks, don't forget, plenty of sports to bet on right now. If you want to win, just bet the complete opposite of what I do, and you'll probably be fine because I bet the under in the Penn State-Oregon game on Saturday. And, yeah, that hit the over in the first half. But if you bet the over, you could go to FanDuel.com right now and get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So make sure you go do that. Winter Meetings is here. And I want to go ahead and start this with just kind of a general, broad kind of assumption of what we're going to see over the next couple of days. Because, you obviously have the Hall of Fame stuff. Is Dave Parker getting in? Probably not. You're looking at Tuesday, MLB Draft Lottery. Pirates have a chance to get it, the number one selection again. 6th best odds to do it. We've seen it happen before. Maybe it happens again. I obviously haven't really looked at the 2025 draft much yet to really get an idea of what I would want the Pirates to select. I don't know if it would really even matter because Ben Cherington doesn't exactly have like a trend that he really follows in these drafts all too much. And then Wednesday, we get the Rule 5 draft. Before we started recording, me and Gary kind of said, of all these things, the MLB Draft Lottery is probably the most important of the three because we just don't expect them to do anything in the Rule 5 draft. Again, Dave Parker, I just don't think is going to get in the Hall of Fame like ever. So I don't think we're really worried about that too much. But the big thing that people are going to be looking for, Gary, obviously, is acquisitions. That's the whole point of this offseason. That's what people want. That's what people almost feel like they need at this point. It's like air. They need an acquisition. Free agency wise, though, what would you expect more trades from this Pittsburgh team, or would you expect more free agent acquisitions from this team? I think it's an interesting conversation to have with the way that this free agent market is already kind of setting itself up.
I've always expected it to be trades, if only because I don't think the Pirates can use everybody they have, really. I mean, like, they've got talent on the mound, and a lot of teams need that. So, yeah, I expect it to be trades. I expect them to fill at least one hole that way. Free agency, it's not like they're not going to do anything in free agency, but I don't think that we should expect a lot. I really don't. I think like first base, for instance, I think they'd really like to move Reynolds there. I really do. And I know their recent quote on it, or at least the recent story that came out about it kind of made it sound like he was going to be part-time there. I think that's just a way of saying, like, this is kind of what we're planning on. Like, that they'd love to move him there. If a first baseman falls in our lap, though, we don't want pinned to it, I would look at the trade market a lot more strong than I look at the free agent market, at least for the position players. For the mound, I think relievers, yeah, you're going to see them sign a couple guys. I wouldn't think that you should roll almost anybody out. Like they don't mind spending money on this. They just mind committing years. So if you get a guy that is willing to take 1 or 2 years, they've shown you they'll do that. Didn't work out, but they'll show you they'll do that.
Yeah, and that's where I kind of agree with all this, because you look at the first base market, and I know people are kind of finding the names they like. Christian Walker obviously has been the most popular that we see from the fan base that people want. On top of a lot of things with him, I do really think the biggest is he's going to have suitors. The Pirates are not the only team in Major League Baseball that doesn't have a need at first base. You're talking about teams that clearly historically spend more money than the Pirates, the Yankees being one of them, the Houston Astros being one of them. There are teams that are obviously going to be interested in a guy like Christian Walker. So if you lose that bidding war, if it's what happens, if they even try to go after him, you go and look around at what else is available at that position, and it's just not good. I mean, you're talking about Paul Goldschmidt. You're talking about Ty France, who I talked about on my Saturday show, just very minimally as just like doomsday options. Carlos Santana's there again, but do we want that again at this point with a young team? You're looking, Josh Bell's there, but there's nothing extravagant to me that I say I have to absolutely have in free agency at first base. So if you do want to move Reynolds to first, I just think that's the better option. And just because they move him to first doesn't mean you can't play him in the outfield anymore. It's not like against the rules to say, oh, yeah, you're playing first base and now you can't play in the outfield anymore. Cubs do it with Cody Bellinger. We've seen Bryce Harper even do it in spurts with the Philadelphia Phillies. It's something teams do all the time. But then that obviously opens up your corner outfield spot, which who knows what they do there either.
I just think there's more options on the market for corner outfielders. There's probably more trades available. There's more free agents available. There's more options there in general. I think it's much easier to acquire that. O'Neal Cruz is going to be your center fielder, so you don't need somebody that can cover half of the field out there. You've got that. You just need a good, strong, solid corner outfielder, preferably left-handed with some power. I'm not saying that that's an easy shopping list, but you can find that. You can trade for that. I also think there's room for, a smaller first baseman deal. Like you get somebody like a Josh Naylor on 1 year. He's only got 1 year left. You get him from Cleveland for, a couple lower level prospects or something along those lines. It's not going to take a huge package to get a guy with 1 year of control. Good player, a lot of power. Hey, if you really like him, extend him. And if not, he just kind of fills in this year and you work Reynolds in slowly. And then you don't need to go and get an aggressive corner outfielder. Maybe you just get a nice piece.
Yeah, and when we're looking at trades, and I think we'll get more into this as the show progresses as well, I don't want people to get scared and shun away from trading for these guys that only have 1 year of control. Yeah, you're going to be giving stuff up to get them, but the whole point in bringing them in is that they're going to at least help you in 2025, and not only help you as far as the team goes, like the on-field product, but also, as you mentioned, easing some of these guys into new roles. You're looking at Brian Reynolds potentially going to first base. That would be a great way to do that, to go get a potentially Cody Bellinger or a Josh Naylor and say, yeah, we'll play you over there whenever there's a lefty on the mound against those guys. And it'll just work itself out, and it'll allow him to kind of just naturally move over there rather than being forced over there. And you look all across the roster, and we'll talk about the roster as it sits right now and what the potential of it has later. But I think the biggest thing that people also have to get into their head right now, this team's going to make moves, but they're not going to probably be the moves that any of us like. They're not going to be these extravagant moves that teams like the Dodgers and the Yankees are always going to make. But hopefully they're moves that have a clear set standpoint on, okay, this guy can come in and slot in here and help things out. I think that's what we're really hoping and expecting, be it trades, be it free agency. But I agree. I do think trades are more plausible, and I also think the fruits that are available out there are not as bad as they are in free agency either.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't roll out like a starting pitcher being brought in. I know that seems kind of counterintuitive, but it wouldn't hurt. I'm just going to say it wouldn't hurt to bring in another option. Left-handed in the bullpen is super thin. Need that. They have some definite things they can go out and shop for. It's real hard to pin them down on it, man, because it's kind of like whack-a-mole in a way. They can patch a hole over here. It's going to create a new one over here. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they could fill one here, and now you're not going to be able to see this guy play. So how do they massage it all into place? I don't know. But when they decided to keep Derek Shelton, I knew right then and there they were doubling down on being right. So I expect to see a lot of at least getting us a look at what they think is right.
Yeah, and we'll get into the young players in the roster in the final part of today's show, but I kind of want to stick with these trade talks a little bit and kind of look at baseball overall and what we could expect from winter meetings outside of the Pirates next. When the weather gets cold outside, folks, we always crave some really good food. And right now you can get some really good food in the form of steaks at omahasteaks.com, because nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off site-wide during their cyber sale on omahasteaks.com. Plus, you can get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code MLB. With 5 generations of experience, Omaha Steaks consistently delivers the world's best steak experience, and their gifting experts have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and so much more, save 50% off site-wide during the cyber sale at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code MLB and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code MLB. Minimum purchase may apply. Check out Omaha Steaks today. And folks, after listening to this show, make sure you go listen to Locked On MLB with Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully. He'll obviously be covering everything you need to know through this winter meetings period, everything you need to know through the offseason, the Juan Soto sweepstakes, and everything else, because he's Paul Francis Sullivan and he loves baseball very much. Can't wait for the summer score to come back next year that he does every year. It's a very neat little metric that he created that's very fun. But we talk about winter meetings, we talk about acquisitions, we talk about all these things. And I can already see the comments and I can already hear the keyboard tipping away like, well, this team doesn't want to get better. This general manager doesn't want to get better. The owner doesn't want to spend money. What if I told you this team could get better without really having to spend much money at all? That's the whole point of these trades. That's why I like talking about them. That's why I like discussing them. I don't think money exactly just flat out equates to a good signing. Willy Adames going to the Giants, to me, that's a good signing. At that price tag, it makes sense. I just don't know how much sense it will make down the line. So you see this all the time where you get guys that you pay a lot of money. Aroldis Chapman was one this past offseason, gave him $10.5 million. He goes to Boston for about $250,000 more. That's his market value. That's what he is. But $10 million wasn't all that expensive, and he was a very good reliever for this team. He gave them exactly what he wanted to give them. He was exactly who we expected him to be, and actually ended up being arguably our best reliever all year, which is saying something about this bullpen. So when you go to trades, too, you already mentioned it with this plethora of pitching that they have. You got to move on from it eventually, right? I mean, it's not like you have to, but at some point, when you see that you have clear needs offensively, don't you eventually kind of move on from your surplus to create a surplus somewhere else?
Yeah, and I would also say in baseball, every time you think you have a surplus, you really don't. I mean, like, let's say God forbid, spring, Paul Skeens hurts his oblique, and Mitch Keller pulls his groin. And now you've got to start Bubba Chandler. Oh, shoot, we traded him.
Mm-hmm.
How about Thomas Harrington? Mike Burrows? Well, now you're relying on less than a rookie phenom. You're relying on just a straight up rookie, right? And I think a lot of people kind of forget what straight up rookies tend to look like. I would just remind everybody how highly touted Mitch Keller was and how long it took him to become something acceptable. And to be blunt, it's 5 years in, and I'm still fighting some of you that he's worth having. Like, because you never forgot how he started.
Mm-hmm.
You're so spoiled by Skeens and Jones that you think every single one of these prospects is going to come up here and do the same thing. That's why you got to be okay with moving on with them. But they're also your depth right now, Ethan. So if you don't sign somebody else, I don't think you can start trading them. So if they backfill it, then I feel a lot better.
Well, and a great example of this too is whenever we talked about the bullpen last year going into the season, we were discussing that bullpen being a potentially top 5 unit in the National League. And then David Bednar goes down in spring training, doesn't really have a spring training. Colin Holderman kind of has an awkward year. And then all of a sudden, Dennis Santana was becoming a real option in that bullpen for the final 2 months of the year. And if you would have told me that before the season started, I probably would have laughed at you. Same thing with Joey Bart. I mean, people looked at the catcher position last year and said, oh, yeah, Henry's going to hold it down. He didn't. They go get Joey Bart. Thankfully, he did. Because if Joey Bart didn't, that catcher position would look really bleak right now. Because you mentioned the young team thing, and we can kind of get into that now with the trades and all that stuff. It's going to be very hard for this team to just flat out move on from guys. I get the whole sentiment that people want, oh, yeah, go get Christian Walker or go get this big name or go get this big name. But at that point, you're also practically giving up on another player that you've invested time into. Perfect examples, Henry Davis and Jack Sawinski. This team is just not going to give up on those guys because they just don't need to. They still have potential. We've seen what Jack Sawinski can be. We've seen in spurts what Henry Davis can be. Andy Rodriguez, when he comes back, has the potential to start his rise eventually. And then you have plenty of questions all over the place, but that's what comes with having a young team. How viable is O'Neal Cruz in center field defensively? We don't really know yet. We only saw it for like a month and a half. We have to see it for a whole year. Can Ke'Bryan Hayes stay healthy and get back to his old form that we've seen? How does the shortstop position look now that you moved O'Neal Cruz? Are you starting IKF there every day? You mentioned it to me before the show. Nick Gonzalez, does he truly just take a stranglehold of second base and suddenly Termar Johnson coming up here just to take the position from him isn't all just sunshine and rainbows? But these are all things that this is all what I'm saying now about this roster before we even get into them getting anybody via trade or via free agency. Imagine what happens then. You got to start making some real decisions if you start going out in free agency and trade and acquiring outside talent.
I mean, it's a weird situation because they probably are a year behind. You know, they should have made a little bit more progress last year. But I think it's safe to assume, just looking at the roster and what is here and what is coming back, they're probably poised to take a little bit of a step forward. You're looking at a progression year for a lot of guys. I love where the pitching staff is going to start. I really think it could shape up. The bullpen that should have been good last year and most of us is returning, it should probably be good again this year. I mean, I want to see more Colin Holderman. I want to see more Carmen Mlodzinski, Kyle Nicholas. I even think Bednar is going to turn it around. You know, I honest to God think it's probably okay. They need a couple lefties. The rotation's pretty solid. The lineup needs help, but man, if the hitting coach was as responsible as half of us acted, like maybe it does kind of take a turnaround. And you know, O'Neal Cruz struggled last year. Like there's a lot of things to look forward to this year. I think the frustration that the fan base feels with spending right now, I don't even know what to tell you. I'm watching this Juan Soto saga unfold, and I mean, we couldn't even get splashed by that mud puddle if we were standing right next to it. That we're never going to ever play in that ever.
Nope.
And until this league changes. And I guess if that has to make you mad, I don't care. I don't care who buys the team. We wouldn't be in on that. That's where like this kind of gets silly to me. Like, I'm not going to complain every day about it because I like watching it. I think they're going to improve, and I think they'll do some things to improve, and I don't think anybody is going to think it was enough.
Yeah. And it's kind of the old adage that the team that wins the offseason, quote unquote, never did. Like, yeah, the Dodgers kind of did because they got Shohei Ohtani, but he was basically like Kevin Durant going to the Warriors when they already had Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond. So how much did they really win the offseason? I mean,
Right.
They won a World Series out of it, so they did. But you look at some past instances where you see teams go out and pay all this money. Like, let's say the Yankees. Yeah, they got to the World Series after acquiring Juan Soto. They didn't win. So
it's like you wreck your car in the winter, and then like your friend who's doing pretty well and drives a Range Rover with like brand new winter studded tires on drives by the house and goes, "Oh, Ethan, you really should have put some winters on that car. You would have, you probably wouldn't have wrecked. And man, if you were getting your tires rotated more often, that never would have happened." And they completely ignore the fact that you flat out can't do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you kind of just, as a fan, I think you just watch all this stuff go by. It's not attainable. It just isn't. Not in this league. I'm sorry. If that's too much for you, don't watch.
Yeah.
Don't ask me to lie to you about it. I'm not going to do it.
No. But when we look at FanGraphs too, and we'll look at this when we come back, you look at the roster right now, and I think it's going to go and touch on a lot of points that me and Gary have made already, and then we'll just make some overarching winter meetings predictions about some of the big stuff going on next on Locked On Pirates. The NFL is in full swing, but also don't forget Major League Baseball is available to you on America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel, because you can bet on where you think Juan Soto will land on FanDuel right now, and you can get ready to take the NFL action and tackle it on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same place where you page where you place your bets. My cat Melly is very much involved in this FanDuel ad right now. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and an official sponsor of the Locked On Podcast Network. Alrighty, everybody. Welcome back to the final part of today's episode of Locked On Pirates here on the Locked On Podcast Network, bright and early on Monday morning. When you look at FanGraphs right now, very fun stuff. Obviously a projection of what this lineup in the rotation and the bench is going to look like and the bullpen's going to look like. Right now, you got IKF at shortstop, Reynolds in left, O'Neill Cruz in center, Bart at catcher, Gonzalez at second, Andy Rodriguez at DH. Let's mind ourselves here that Andrew McCutchen in all likelihood will be back. They just haven't taken that into account yet because it's not official. Hayes at third, Palacios in right field, and Billy Cook at first base. The bench then features Jason DeLay, Jared Triolo, Nick York, and Trey Cabbage. Plenty of time for that to change. Rotation is pretty much the rotation you watched in 2024. Skeens, Keller, Jones, Falter, Ortiz. Bullpen, Bednar, Santana, Holderman, Majinski, Nicholas, Wentz, Strzelecki, I can't ever pronounce his name, and Johan Oviedo. Obviously, a lot of that's going to change, but what is the overarching point that me and Gary have made for the last 25 minutes? Every player on that list is very young. Outside of maybe, Brian Reynolds and IKF and some of the established guys. But you go look at this starting lineup that they have. O'Neal Cruz, Joey Bart, Nick Gonzalez, Endy Rodriguez, Joshua Palacios, Billy Cook, and Ke'Bryan Hayes. Outside of Palacios and Hayes, it's a pretty young group. I mean, if you ask me, nobody over 30 in that starting lineup on FanGraphs. On the bench, nobody over 30. In the rotation, nobody over 30. In the bullpen, 2 people over 30 years old. So you're telling me that Andrew McCutchen's going to be your one guy that's going to be above the age of 30 on this team until Brian Reynolds turns 30 years old? And it's a young team. And honestly, that should excite people. Because wouldn't you kind of expect a positive regression for some of these guys? I mean, David Bednar, to me, I don't think is going to be as bad as he was this year. I don't think Colin Holderman is going to be as bad as he was this year. You're also adding in the fact that Henry Davis maybe takes the next step. Endy Rodriguez can maybe find a way to do it as well, and they become real contributors. Maybe O'Neal Cruz turns into that 30-30 player that we want to see. These are all things that can realistically happen. And Gary, you said it to me before we started too. Don't you kind of want to see Billy Cook and Nick York play after you traded some actual guys to get them? I mean, it's not like we traded nobodies.
I mean, I do.
I absolutely want to see them.
I do. I want to see them go out and sign some guys too. I'm just saying, like, that you're not going to completely resurface this road here. You're not. You're filling in a couple potholes, and you're hoping that you can get through for a season until you've got some better materials to lay down that road. I think that's kind of the hope this year. It's not a good position for a GM that's under pressure to be in.
No.
But I think if they hired a new GM, let's say they had gone another direction and decided to bring in a new GM this year, they'd have made some changes in the office. They'd obviously have changed the coaching. But I don't think that you would see them empty the team out. They're very much so a young team. You would see them kind of change course on something somewhere. Maybe you'd see an aggressive, bigger move to kind of put their stamp on the team. But I don't think that you would see them go back to the drawing board. I don't think you will next year if this thing fails. I think you'll see them build around what's already here. You're not going to just wash your hands of what you've built in this rotation. You're just not.
Yeah, and you have no reason to. I think that's the biggest point I can make. I know we can all get very upset at Ben Cherington and this front office for not doing things. How much do you really want him to do? He's already kind of laid the groundwork for what the core of this team is going to be. At some point, it's up to the players. I mean, I'm going to just go ahead and say that. I know we all hated Andy Haynes. I know
the Reds are in the same situation, though. Like, the Reds are a very similar comp. Ton of young talent came up. It was supposed to take off last year, and really, Ellie De La Cruz did. You know, they're big-time top-end pitching guys that were supposed to carry them. They kind of didn't. You know, and all these guys that were supposed to be surefire hitters, they weren't. A couple guys got hurt. You know, like, I think they're in a really very similar position. They fired their coach. I think they probably should have fired him a couple years ago, much like most of you think about Derek Shelton. So I don't know. I think there's good things to look forward to this year. I'm choosing not to be bitter about them deciding to hold on to a coach that I thought had seen his course run.
Yeah, I mean, that's the team's decision. I'm a fan of the team. I'm going to ride with it at this point. That's how I kind of am too. I'm like, if he wasn't fired by now, he ain't getting fired, folks. I'm just going to be honest with you. If it didn't happen by now, it ain't happening. It's just not going to. But with all that said, the Pirates, yeah, I think clearly we're going to see them do some things. It's just not going to be the extravagant things. I think it's going to be business as usual. As far as other things, I'll just ask plainly, where do you think Juan Soto ends up, Gary?
New York Yankees.
Think he stays?
I think when they went out to California to meet with him, I think they basically said, please just give us the right of final refusal. We want an opportunity to match or exceed anything that you get. And they've just sat back and waited.
Yeah.
You know, and I believe pretty much right after the winter meetings, that'll get done. Because I think Boris does want his guys done and out of the way now. And then the other big one's Sasaki. Like, I think that'll probably post during the winter meetings. And if everything I'm hearing and seeing and reading is correct, he'll be an LA Dodger by the end of next week.
That's what I would think. Soto, on the other hand, I do think that I agree with your stance on the Yankees getting the right of final refusal. I just, for some reason, keep putting it in my head that Steve Cohen is just hell-bent on outbidding everyone to flex his money. So I really do think there's a real possibility he could go to the Mets, but I don't see him leaving the East Coast. I don't think he's going to go to Toronto. I don't think he's going to go to the Dodgers. I don't think he's going anywhere out west. I think he's going to stay in New York. It's just a matter of which team. Right. And I could see both. Really, like, I would not be shocked by either. I think that's the biggest thing here is, like, if he ends up in a Mets uniform, I wouldn't be shocked. If he
I
stays
think we'll
with the
be
Yankees,
shocked by the price tag.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the price tag, absolutely, we will all be shocked by. I think it's going to get up to $735 to $750 million.
I think it'll be 750-ish.
Yeah.
I do. I could even see it hitting 800, which is ridiculous. But, depending on where that is, I don't think that any of the East Coast teams can defer as much money as would make it ridiculous. So,
yeah. You have some other big ones. You mentioned Corbin Burns a little bit earlier, potentially as a Red Sox. We already saw Willy Adames go off the board. Alex Bregman, I think, is an interesting one. I kind of toyed with the idea of the Pirates maybe going after him at some point, but not at that price tag whatsoever. It's not going to happen. And really, outside of that, I mean, you already mentioned Sasaki. I think he's going to go to the Dodgers. You have that other Japanese kid that's going to get posted soon. He's a shortstop, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he'll get some play, obviously. There's a lot of stuff to watch. I mean, trade-wise, you're always going to have names kind of pop up. We already have seen some deals. Clay Holmes goes to the Mets and is going to be moved into a starting role. I'm actually kind of fascinated to see that because I think the Pirates tried to do it when he was here at some point or wanted to. So that'll be fun to watch. And again, you're always going to have that one move, I think, during winter meetings that we just don't expect. Like, it's just going to be like, why in the world would Team A trade for Team B, and why would Team B even be trading said player? And that's the beauty of baseball. You just never know what's going to happen.
I do have one trade proposal that I think is possible. I think the Cubbies want to get rid of Cody Bellinger real bad. He's got an option after 2025. He does make a lot of money, but you could get him for a song. I mean, they want to get rid of his salary.
Mm-hmm.
That guy can play first base, center field, either of the corner outfield positions. Big left-handed power. Even when he sucks, he hits 20. This is a guy that I think they could go out and get, but you'd have to be willing to pay. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. You'd have to eat the salary. You have to be willing to accept that if he stinks, he's going to stay for another year. And I mean stinks in his mind, like that he's not worth $20 million, right? So that he could be a relatively good player and still want to exercise that option. Or he's really good and he walks. So what? So what? You're giving up nothing for him. Just be willing to pay for it this year. That's a great solution I'd love to see the Pirates go after, and we wouldn't see whoever we traded hurt us on a Cubs uniform for a while.
Yeah, and I talked about that on Saturday as far as targeting rivals. I overvalued them, I think, because I said it would take like 4 or 5 guys. Did not realizing that a report came out that, yeah, they are virtually just trying to just get rid of the guy.
You could probably get Sasaki too, but it would cost more.
Yeah.
Or Suzuki, sorry. but it would cost more too.
And he also has a no trade clause, correct?
He has a no trade clause, and he has 2 years on his deal. They would trade Ian Happ, I bet. I'd love that.
Well, yeah, Mr. Pittsburgh Pirate Killer himself, Ian Happ, being in a Pirates uniform, I think would just be a full circle.
He also has a no trade.
Yeah. Feel like him coming to the Pirates would be like Colton Wong when he went to the Brewers. It would just be like, okay, thank God that guy's not on the other team anymore, so he can't hurt us anymore. But folks, thank you so much for tuning in on this Monday morning edition, Gary Morgan Monday edition of Locked On Pirates on Monday, December 9th. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your Monday. I'll see you tomorrow as we gain more rumors, more predictions, more signings, hopefully, more trades, hopefully, from winter meetings. Find the show on YouTube and all of your audio platforms. Follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan. Follow Gary at GaryMo2007. Check out his 5 Thoughts at 5 later today. And have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you on the flip side.